Emery Jacquia, en dehors d'être le président de la communauté des entreprises à mission, c'est le CEO de la CAMIF. Alors moi qui suis fils de prof, je connais bien la CAMIF historiquement. Et ils ont été rachetés cette semaine par la Maïf, qui était Pascal Demurger était avec nous l'année dernière. Il devait être là ce soir. Il a eu un empêchement, mais donc c'est rigolo. Et quand on partage les mêmes valeurs, finalement ça rapproche et ça permet de dresser des perspectives. Alors les perspectives des entreprises à mission et des entreprises socialement responsables, elles sont le mieux données par les entrepreneurs, les entreprises de toute taille, des grands groupes, des sociétés qui sont des scale-up ou des start-up, et puis également par le politique, soutenu par le politique. Donc Stanislas Guérini va venir juste après cette table ronde et avant l'intervention de Marie Guillemot, la CEO, la présidente de KPMG, pour donner le ton de la présidence française de l'Union européenne qui va démarrer au début de l'année. Je sais que Béatrice, Mandine, tu as une... je me permets de te tutoyer, on se connaît bien. Tu as un impératif à 17h, donc dès que tu dois t'en aller, tu pars, tu fais ça quand tu le souhaites au bon moment, et je me ferai fort de te faire intervenir au début pour te le permettre.
Gentil, merci.
Donc il n'y a pas de problème. Et je vais juste vous dire qui est on stage, même si vous voyez les appartenances de société. Donc Ludovic, tout le monde le connaît, je pense que ce serait un affront de vous le représenter. Alors Stéphane Palaise, elle a eu un empêchement de dernière minute, et c'est Vincent Perrotin qui est le directeur RSE et secrétaire des parties prenantes du groupe Française des Jeux qui la représente, et je vous remercie de le faire au pied levé. Donc merci et bienvenue Vincent. Nicole Bardet, qui est à ma gauche, au board de Banque alternative suisse, mais tu nous expliqueras mieux que personne ce dont il s'agit. Et puis Antoine Sire, et on va commencer par vous Antoine, vous êtes Corporate Engagement du groupe BNP, membre du COMEX de ce beau groupe financier qui fait beaucoup dans la direction de ce que l'on décrit finalement depuis 2 jours et demi au sein de la communauté NextGen et du NextGen Enterprise Summit.
Of course, a great deal with what we've been talking about over the past few days. And before I hand you the floor, I'm going to mention Olivier Guéroy-Coire and quote him. There's no tax advantage in being a purpose-driven company. For those in France, for those of you who are foreign, a lot of people here and online are not French. So I explain the situation with the world champions in on taxation and engineering and fiscality. We're the world champions in this. I learned this when I was a student. And during his introduction in the PACT law, she says, well, I thought about it, but I think that we become a purpose-driven company because we believe in our purpose and mission and not in a tax credit. There's no point in having a tax break to have authentic and genuine commitment. And Brice Rocher, who's the boss of the former Yves Rocher group, that's now the Rocher group, says that beyond raison d'être, you need proof of this raison d'être, of this. It's the same as in love. That's what Emery said. He talked about love, and that's what we're talking about. Beyond love, there are proofs of love. And if half the companies of the CAC 40 have defined their raison d'être, few have actually written them into their statutes. There's a lot of work to do. The direction is on, we're going in the right direction, but we can go beyond this. And yesterday, Roland Skew was saying that when the BPI invested in a company, he was quite for the fact that this company could also be part of this sort of raison d'être and included in the statute, in the statutes. In the Rocher report, there are a whole lot of rules and regulations. We've published this within NextGen. It would be fastidious to go through all of the rules and regulations, but in this report there are rules and regulations. It's not a complacent report. It tells you what works and what you need to do to accelerate things. And one of the recommendations is to further the principle of precaution, which is made credible by criteria, and then project oneself with statutes and foundations that mean going through a shareholder that's stabilized to maintain the raison d'être over time and protect oneself from the capitalistic changes. Antoine, thank you for being with us. Thank you for supporting our movement. Companies can be part of these ESG this ESG approach, environmental, social, and governance objectives. They can be part of these recognized practice without having adopted raison d'être or the purpose-driven company definition. Can you describe the context of BNP Paribas? You're a financial leader, and I was reading that in the newspaper that you were the European leader at the moment. So can you tell us what you're carrying out in terms of actions in this area within BNP and with the whole group? And why has your group recently been appointed as the best bank in the world for sustainable finance by Euromoney, the magazine? Good evening. Thank you. This is an award. There are others, but I think the subject really is we are part of the groups that have defined this sort of reason for being, raison d'être, and the main subject is that we're the first European bank, and we are a bank. The word finance is a word that defines very different and diverse aspects, but in a bank we finance the economy. We're the first bank of the European economy, and so that means that we bring along with us to a certain extent all of the inheritance of or inherited economy. We've been around for over 150 years, or nearly 150 years, and we were set up by publishers actually to help along with the Industrial Revolution 150 years ago. And so our reason for existence, our raison d'être, is to be there to help companies finance their transformation process, and that's why they need transformation. So this requires, of course, a certain discipline and suppleness or agility that's specific. And of course, today we need to integrate very strongly environmental and social aspects in our decision-making processes, and we weren't ready for this. In other words, our history or background 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 100 years ago said to us, well, you have to finance the economy, you have to help the economy to develop. This was part of our mission, but the mission statement, sometimes banks have forgotten this mission and started making money with money, but we never felt that this was our mission, and we've also always felt that our mission was to work for our customers, and that's why we are in a rather good position today, because we are among the banks that have never forgotten this. And however, this mission that has been driving us for 150 years cannot be our only mission. And since we finance the whole economies, private owners and private people and institutions, and it means we need to change fully the way in which we build our information. It's been 150 years. We've been working with financial information for 150 years, and we've been making decisions based on this financial information. And so we need to change fully the way in which we feed or could obtain the information and feed the information into the system and pop it into the decision-making process, and then make decisions within which environmental and social criteria will have a substantial weight. Let me give you an example of this. For example, today we're a substantially sized bank. We're the first bank in the European industry, and we're currently introducing in a systematic way within our decision-making criteria a memo on the climate, one on biodiversity, a memo on social rights and human rights, one on impact in the communities, and one on ethics in business. It doesn't mean that we were not concerned about these criteria before. We've been doing and concerned about them for years, but it means that from now on they are part of our industrial process. And no decision can be made without taking on board these criteria. For the moment, this is something we do for our 700 major customers, but our 700 major customers are major companies, and of course, this means that this will happen for other customers. This is one example among others, and if various people have had an idea of what a bank is and what the processes are here, it means that one can understand the degree of transformation and of revolution that this all involves. Our Director General spends at least 20% of their time doing this. It's something fantastic, and it's a true transformation. And in fact, listening to you, I have two questions. This rating is linked to what? Is it internal to the BNP, or is it based on standards that are exogenous? And the second question is, what forces you to do this, in fact? What encourages you to do this, to put it in a more positive way? Well, firstly, noting or rating companies that we lend to is what we do as a job. Up until now, we used to do it on on the criteria that were financial exclusively. We use our history and background information with the companies, financial aspects, indicators from the outside world, rating agencies, and we also base ourselves on these type of criteria. We're doing the same at this moment with extra financial criteria, which means that the company says a certain number of things pop up, and are brought to the fore in our relationship with them. They're judged by external rating agencies. Given a rating, they can be open to controversy that is then analysed, and we're currently, getting tools of artificial intelligence tools. There'll also be manual intelligence, human intelligence. Sometimes we do things by hand. It's not all, like this, and all of this, of course, is currently being built, and in the end. And this is already the case today. Today, on the range of our investment funds, we have what we call an ESG filter. It's the same thing. It's a mixture of data that we obtain from external organizations and processes that are internal. And in the end, it really is down to our know-how. And let me take the case of savings, actually, because in the past, when you used to sell a savings product to people, they used to ask you to commit to risk, liquidity, and yield. And today, they ask you to commit to the impact that this will have on the environment and on social aspects. And so we need, within our decision-making channels and chain and information, we need to be able to answer these questions and respond to them. Why do we do it? Well, for various reasons. If we don't do it very quickly, people will raise their hand and say, well, sorry, guys, but you're not the bank that we need in the 21st century. And we're fully persuaded and convinced of this. It's leading to something that is a vital challenge, and it's also something that can be explained very easily financially. Banks are far more over the long term, analyze things over the long term than one imagines. When one takes out a loan, it's over several years. So we still need that company to be there over 5 to 10 years to reimburse their loan. And if they haven't adapted to company transformation and new requirements of society, they won't be there to reimburse their credit, their loan. We're not there to condemn our customers, of course. We're there to help them. It doesn't mean that we don't divest ourselves from some from time to time, given what I've just said, but it's the purpose of companies that are our customers to carry out this transformation process. Now, of course, in some cases they can't do it, and in that case they cannot remain customers to us or for us because, for example, in the sector of electricity production, we already have applied certain elements that we've built in other sectors. And, of course, last year we stopped having as a customer half of the electricity companies in the world because these companies did not have an exit plan from the coal as an energy that was convincing. Since we're present in 70 countries, we have customers in the whole wide world in this sector, and since last year we have half the number of customers. Well, it's very clear, and it's a very striking example, isn't it? Thank you, Antoine. Béatrice, there is a group I know well, it's Orange. I spent 22 years working for Orange, but I know that you've done a great deal of fantastic work on the reason behind all of this, the raison d'être that really, brought on board the social corpus. I would like you to tell us how it happened in Orange and how it's important, and how it's important within the whole approach to link and associate a certain number of employees, or all of them. And since you were in charge of this project, I think it's good, and it's a real chance for you to explain it to us. Thank you. Well, what happened is that we used the opportunities with the Pact law. There's also the Orange brand, of course, in purpose-driven companies are not a discovery of the Pact Law. It's something that we've been working with for a long time in Orange. But what has changed is that thanks to this opportunity, it's created this dynamic. And this dynamic is something that Stéphane Richard has grasped and seized, and did seize in 2019 to announce to the General Assembly. It's very solemn. He announced the fact that we were going to formalize this raison d'être. I liked saying it like this because it's not just fallen from the sky. It's not a creativity exercise. It's especially not a communication tool either, or exercise in terms of, or in the meaning of, in the sense of creation as a buzzword. It was a desire to formalize what we are, what our DNA is, and where we want to go, but starting from what we actually are. And so Orange is has inherited, or is the follow-up from France Télécom, a public service company, and we started from what are not called values in Orange, but philosophy. It's called human insight, and it's the idea that technology studies evolution if it is serving the human being. So we started from this. We started with the Orange brand, and the Orange brand is the cement that holds together. It's the common element within the group. It's a very diversified group, present in approximately 30 countries. The public at large footprint is all over the world, and it sells close or local and products. And it's not. We don't just produce in France or make in France and sell all over the world. These are services that are essential for our customers locally, and it's quite different from other structures and companies. Oh, it's the same for my colleague here, Antoine, in his company. Now Stéphane started by asking employees on Twitter to what the raison d'être of Orange was. It was a way of setting things going, or setting them off and getting them going. It was very successful, actually. 15,000 interactions followed, and then we carried out a consultation process that was better designed. Every employee on an application and using artificial intelligence in their language all over the world was available, so they could answer and make suggestions and vote or like or not unlike or dislike proposals from others and make comments. And beyond this, we worked with the executive committee during 3 or 4 workshops, which they found was quite amusing. It changed them from their daily sort of what they were used to on a daily basis. And then we also had interviews with 40 stakeholders, NGOs, unions, former directors from Orange, journalists, observers, and in the end we came out with a formula. And we also announced this reason, or raison d'être. It was something that created an expectation, and we obtained 130 votes out of 130 people. So some people answered maybe several times. But anyway, that's a lot of people. And we also asked our customers what they felt with the use of surveys. And we also announced our raison d'être at the same time as a strategic plan. So the questioning of the 130,000 employees and people in the ecosystem, how long did that take? It took a year, just under a year. We set things going at the General Assembly, and we talked about the raison d'être, and we had to work in-house to summarize all of this data. You can understand what I'm talking about. And then we announced it in December, it was just under a year. And since then, there's been quite a lot of work to do. That was my question. How do you actually, apply this? Well, during the next General Assembly in May, we wrote this raison d'être into the statutes, and then we had started an operational development of the raison d'être, and to show that in daily life it's useful and that it's not just, a filter for our actions. And so we worked on on a series of indicators, well, 14 actually, that enable us to demonstrate that we are moving forward in the world on the path of progress. It's a sort of compass, I suppose. And we also set up a committee called the Raison d'Agir Committee, Reason to Act. It's made up of 8 experts. 8 experts in their own world, field of activity. They're external experts. There are 2 from the company, Elisabeth Chomy, Human Resources Director, and myself on it, but otherwise it's just external people, and their purpose traditionally is that they act as critiques. We provided them with the indicators so that they could push us in the right direction, but they have quite a lot of margin for manoeuvre, and we did the first during the committee meeting last week. It was quite amusing, actually, because you can see that it's during this type of exercise that you learn by doing things. We hadn't done much of this before, and we allowed them to help us along and push us in the right direction, or allow us to do certain things. And then to finish off, we also work on teaching and getting people to understand what the raison d'être is, and so that everyone can take it on board, activity by activity. And we try to do with them go through along this pathway and really take on this concept. And I hope that it will remain that way. Very interesting. I have an additional question. Now, 30 countries, different continents. It's very decentralized. The approaches based on the brands. It's very different. You know this better than anyone else. So the raison d'être. What about the, running it in different countries? How do you manage all of this? Variety. Well, it's quite interesting to see. The world is fairly heterogeneous, but when you talk about basic elements, there's a common understanding. There was the same appetite for it in all of the different countries to work on it and to define who we are. We have in common the fact that we're convinced that digital technology allows for many things, and that's where we met or came together. And the digital technology is a progress for human beings if we're warned about the dangers that it also brings with it, and that's what we looked at. Now, I haven't been in Orange for the past 3 years, but Orange is not worried about looking at the potential dangers of digital technology, all of the connections and the radio waves and everything, and it's all done without holding back. I've seen this from the inside out. It's a form of transparency that's very strong within the group. Yes, this is what led us to work on this a lot, being transparent on risks. There's a first risk. I don't know if you remember this, but we committed a great deal to road safety, if you remember, and that came from the fact that we assumed and realized that there were a lot of accidents that were linked to. So we didn't hear what she said because the interrupted her to scooters, I think she said. So we started with road safety, but we could also maybe look at the scooters as well. So there's the whole subject of the carbon footprint and how smartphones are built. It's become very generalized or widespread. We don't make smartphones, but we sell a lot, and we have therefore set up sectors to recycle these phones. So it's the first barrier on entry. We need to build them. They didn't exist. Today they do exist, and it's the first pitfall, really. First pitfall is to bring various elements or bring their phone back to the store. It's not necessarily something they do spontaneously. So managing the flows and return of stock is all very well, saying, you need to recycle these things. That's what we're looking at the moment. Thank you very much, Beatrice. Vincent, at the FDG organization, you are a respectable, honorable company. 1933, the French lottery was created. Your flotation was carried out during the last NextGen summit before the beginning of COVID, 10 days before the event last year. I remember Stéphane Pallès is someone I met at the Finance and Economy Ministry, and I think that the personality, this was the flotation, or the floating on the stock market was linked to the personality of the company with strong roots. Could you talk about how you worked on this and developed it? How it's linked to the social corpus of the company, La Française des Jeux. Of course. Hello to everyone. We got on this great ship, the adventure, the raison d'être, and this was alongside the floating on the stock market. That's not why we did it, of course, but we were in quite an unique situation because the Pact Law included privatizing our flotation and also the formalizing of the whole system. Some companies might have thought it was a constraint, but for us it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to explain who we were, and this was at a key moment in our history, and to explain it to our various stakeholders, to investors, to the public at large. And that's why we did it. And we were not that well known. Not that many people know our background, that we were created in the 1930s, that we're a company that was set up for a reason, for society. So les gueules cassées, so a lot of foreigners. So les gueules cassées are the people who were in the First World War and who were disfigured in the trench war and could no longer go back into society, and they ended up alone after the war. They were former soldiers, they were trench war soldiers, and a certain number of them set up the national lottery to get them to help them. And we've inherited this former association and the former, and they. So these former servicemen were, are part of our background history, and this is very much part of our, the history we have now. This corporate social responsibility is at the heart of our background history and about what we do now, and it's a specificity of what we do. Our company sells games, online games, and money games. And this is linked to risks. Our product is very different, and this is something that was very much part of what we did and offered, and that's what we told as a story in our reason for being, our raison d'être. And why did it work? Well, it worked because we needed to explain this to investors. We did it, and in the midst of all of this, we co-built it quite substantially with our stakeholders, and I'm going to try to not say the same thing as Béatrice, but we carried out the same process, more or less. We're much smaller, of course, than Orange, but we held real workshops on our different sites with employees, and during this, we asked them if it made sense to them and what our mandate was. And the mandate they gave us was that they agreed to be on board, or we agreed to be on board, but if it was just communication, then we would need to be there. They didn't need us. And then secondly, we asked them to write down reasons, or raison d'être, and we carried out workshops on all levels of the company, executive committee level, any site in the company, and we then gathered all of this information and built a project that includes elements that were made and developed in a workshop. I remember how they were made. That was an ongoing process that was very wide-spanning, and then we needed it to be adopted and approved. So we did this during our first General Assembly with new investors. We told them beforehand that we would be showing them this raison d'être, and that would be one of the first actions we would like them to do in order to set it in the statutes, and that's what we did. And then all of this needed to become alive. That was just the beginning, the adopting of the raison d'être. You then have to put it in bring it to life. And vis-à-vis our employees, it was a starting point. Throughout the year that's just gone by, we worked with them and we organized over 600 workshops with over 87% of the employees in the group to see how the results were dealt with, how they wanted to become involved, how they wished to take part in implementing this raison d'être and the commitments that we had publicly and openly co-built with them for our stakeholders, and thirdly, what their proposals were to go further to improve things. And so at the moment we're gathering all of this, and the purpose really was to do before, during and after. There's a long road ahead still, and we still have a lot to do. Thank you very much, Vincent.
You are the head of the alternative bank in Switzerland, Nicole Bardet. So I would be very interested in knowing how the alternative Swiss bank came to be. What is your raison d'être, your purpose? And as I said, there was a report talking about legitimacy, and that we should avoid washing. So we talk about greenwashing, but washing can happen in other sectors. And I think Antoine gave some criteria here, some facts to help us assess what we do wrong. And Béatrice, whose brand director, explained as well that she was being very careful about this. So Nicole Bardet, can you give us your insight on what the Alternative Swiss Bank is doing?
Absolutely, thank you. So the Alternative Bank has quite a singular story, a particular story, because it's not some company that has been created and then thought about its raison d'être, its purpose. It's a company that has been created for a purpose. So from the get-go, our raison d'être, our purpose, was enshrined in our legal status. And why? Well, because some actors, some stakeholders from the finance world decided to gather in Switzerland to do something differently. They didn't want the old model anymore. And what really defines our model, it's being coherent in making products that respect human beings and the environment. And 30 years ago, we didn't really talk about sustainable development and pillars and such. So we had our own vocab to talk about this, but the idea was really to put the human beings and the environment at the heart of our values. And also, how do we implement measures so that we have a long-lasting development? We know that when growth happens, we might lose our value at some point, that money could be seen as a priority. So we tried to write that down in our statuses as well. And there is another principle that says that we cannot be bought by another bank. We need to stay independent. We're transparent as well. For Swiss Bank, that was something incredible, I can tell you, a true revolution. A customer has to declare that they have an account with us. It might seem quite basic today, but that was quite revolutionary 30 years ago. And I talked to my colleagues from other banks, and they said, what? Your company allows you to tell your companies, your clients allow you to tell that they have a loan with you at your bank? And yes, they're quite proud to have loans with us. So we think about sustainability, about ethical principles as well. We think that our clients should also reflect our values, and that's the way we ensure that our raison d'être stays the same and stay our top priority on the long term.
Luc Breton, it's easier to start from scratch than to change habits and to change a whole culture of company. So you're confirming that with what you're saying. We are closing, touching the end of the roundtable. I would like, Ludovic, for you to have some concluding words because I'm fascinated with what you do at ACTO. You talked about it a bit during the award ceremonies, so I would like to develop more what you said about the convention of companies for the climate. It started in September. You're going to meet 4 times a year. There are aims that are aligned with the Paris Agreement's objectives. So how do you do that, and how do you work within that with your more than 1,000 employee company? So it's a convention that drew inspiration from the Citizens' Climate Convention in France. It wasn't a governmental initiative like the Citizens' Climate Convention was, but the idea was to go and ask companies that were interested in environmental issues to see if they would like to be involved, to maybe mobilize the financial actors and political actors and raise awareness amongst them on environmental issues. Once companies agree and take part in that convention, they have to reflect on several commitments and values revolving around the protection of the environment. So how did we join that convention? Well, we applied. There are 150 companies in that convention today. They're very different. We're trying to be representative, to work in every sector with every different companies. And we have companies that are experts in the matter and companies that are newer to the issue. And we're very proud to be part of that convention. The environmental issue is something that we've been dealing with at ACTO for several years. We're not a purpose-driven company, but we're a B Corp certified company, so we did integrate the environmental problematic in our statuses. So, as I said, I think that the environmental challenge is going to be the challenge of the coming years. Lots of questions are still unanswered. Lots of taboos are also, not being discussed yet. For example, the taboo of growth and stopping growth. So there's a lot of discussion going on, and sometimes it's a bit scary, to be honest. What I've seen and marked me is that people are saying we're facing challenges that we don't know how to solve yet, but we have good hope that in 2 years, 3 years, we will have to tackle them, and we will have to completely reshape who we are and what we do. I have to unfortunately conclude because Stanislas Guérini needs some time after this, but what I remember from what I've heard is that if we could explain to a client that this and that digital service should not be developed within their company because it's not useful and it's wasteful. Do you think it's something you could do? Ludovic, I think at some point in 2 years, 3 years, we will have to do this. So far, we're not really able to measure our carbon footprint, our digital carbon footprint. And we know that the digital world has a huge carbon footprint, probably the biggest carbon footprint of all sectors. In every company, in every council company, we have a digital footprint. So we need to be able to assess it and control it. And And the next step is also to know how much it's costing us. And do we need to do blockchain, for example, knowing that blockchain requires the same level of energy as a country such as Greece. So that's a real question and a real issue. Luc Breton, thank you. Thank you for the quality of the debate. Thank you for what you're doing within your companies. I think you're showing courage, and your initiatives are really, again, very brave. And as you said, Ludovic, it's high time that change happens. And it's absolutely urgent. It's high time to tackle this issue if we don't want to just fail and have catastrophic consequences. I would now like to have Stanislas Garigny with me on stage.
Bonjour Stanislas.
Good afternoon, Stanislas. Thank you. You are here to represent, we're going to see this on the slide, you're here to represent Bruno Le Maire, the Minister for Economy and Finance. He supports us, he has supported us for 3 years. He couldn't be here tonight, so thank you for representing him. And thank you also for your work, because Olivia Grégoire always tells me that you've been instrumental in the Pact Law, in the drafting of the Pact Law. You're probably the one who worked in the shadows, so thank you. And who's better placed than you to explain the consequences of that law, the processes that are now underway. And this is what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about the European perspectives. And you have in front of you an audience here and online, people who really believe in that movement. Thank you. I need the table. Don't go fetch anything for me. I've got everything I need. Thank you. I would like to start by saying hello to everyone and thank Luc Breton for giving me the opportunity to come here and for giving us the opportunity to gather. I arrived early and I was happy to be able to listen to part of the debate just now, and I was quite touched when I listened to you, because suddenly law articles become realities. And what we do is only the start when we draft a law. And I see that you're taking that start and building something on it. And you yourself, you're saying that a raison d'être is only the beginning, that a purpose is only the beginning. So it really moved me, and I was really pleased to hear that. And I'm quite proud as well to be able to be here and to have carried out this work, this legislative work. I'm representing Bruno Le Maire. He would have said things better than me, but I'm really delighted to be with you today. And trust me, to build bridges between the French people and company and businesses is one of my core priorities. It's something I really like to do. And I'm not a politician, but it's not been my whole career. And when I entered political life, I really wanted to make business the center of society. And I've got that belief, because I've been an entrepreneur as well, that companies can help society. I lived through failures, I lived through growth, to creation of companies. I went through all the steps that entrepreneurs know. You know this very well, but this is also my background. I had a company in renewable energy, something that was meaningful to me, but was not opposed to profit making, because of course when you make profit you can grow your company and you can share value with those who make the company work. And when Bruno Le Maire And Benjamin Griveaux and other people gave us the responsibility, to Olivier Grégoire as well, to Roland Lescure, I think, to when we were given with other people that responsibility to prepare, to draft the PACT law, it's been a real honor. They gave us a whole floor at Bercy, the Ministry of Finance building, and it became sort of a startup. We sort of disrupted a bit the people who worked there at the time. There were lots of important people in that building who came, and that, you know, were a bit. It was a bit different than what they were used to. And we worked on chapter 3 of the Law Pact, social responsibility and sharing of values in companies. And it was a huge responsibility for us to transform this vision into legal acts, into legal texts. But we realized that under this presidency, it was really important to carry this project for the businesses. And I was really struck to see that in France, the relationship was extremely problematic and always with oppositions, competitivity against responsibility, for example. And I am of the opposite opinion. I think that both opinions can go hand in hand and they can actually work very well together. A company who has no sense of responsibility will lose all competitiveness, I think. Because key is innovation if you want to compete. And if innovation is not a strategy, then your company will not last long term, will not be sustainable, will not be competitive. Very often, innovation means that you have to move away from the short-term planning and thinking long-term within the capitalist framework, within the strategy of the business, is not only philanthropic, it's also creating the right conditions to attract the best talents and to create the ground for innovation. And when you have innovation, you have competition. And you have competitiveness. And I think that's what we should have at the European scale. We should have a European model that would be different from the Chinese or American model. I'm not going to give you all the history of the reforms we've carried out under this presidency in favor of the businesses. But I think that we've done a great deal. Businesses know that they can count on parliament members from the majority and the government. We are allies, and I do believe that businesses have the solutions to face and solve the challenges of demographic growth, of technology, and of the environment. In my opinion, the PACT law allowed us to carry a message to show that the businesses had their role to play within the country and within the civilization. And this is why we wanted to vote this law, which is a law about competitiveness. And thanks to that law, we're able to remove all the obstacles that companies know and that companies encounter when they are created and when they're developing. I'll give you just a few examples so that my speech will not be too long. You have thresholds. And the threshold issue was really hindering growth for SMEs. We had 50 thresholds before the PACT law for SMEs.
That's crazy. Under 49 employees, you had to triple your figures, and so on, between 49 and 50 employees. And we erased all these thresholds except for 3. So there is no threshold for 10, 20, 30, and so on. We really simplified things, and we enabled companies that had more than 55 employees. We give them 5 years to grow, and that was a true revolution. And I know that this 55 employee threshold is so important for entrepreneurs. We also simplified the statuses of some companies, of self-entrepreneurs. We changed things with certifications. We did a lot for businesses. The PACT law is about responsibility, and we said that we were taking stock, and I think that after 2 years we see results. For the 3rd year in a row, our country is the most competitive country in Europe. Who could have imagined that years ago when talking about France? We've got the best European growth now, right after the crisis. We're creating new industrial jobs again, and for 15 years we've been always cutting jobs in the industry sector, and now we're turning the table, and we're slowly catching up with our German neighbors by creating new jobs and by creating intermediary-sized companies. And as for unicorns and scale-ups, we need all kind of companies, all sizes of companies, but we have 22 unicorns, and we hope to have 25 by the end of the presidency, and I'm sure that we will exceed our expectation. And this is fantastic for the attractiveness of our country. And there is another fight we've tried to carry out, is the fight for full employment. As I said, the PACT law is a law about competitiveness and about responsibility. We've tried to encourage a new culture in company, especially about finances, about how to fund your company. And I think that we really had an influence there. Again, don't want to give you too many technical details, but when we asked every life insurance product to have at least one account unit in a responsible project, then it allowed to increase by 25% the amount of units dedicated to social projects. If we want to talk about what's next, then if Olivia was there, she talked about the Impact platform. I don't know if you know that platform, the Impact platform. It should be better known because it helps the companies to adapt. And you've talked about reporting a bit during the debate, about measures, about assessment, about being flexible, transparent into our company. And I think that this is really how we're going to change behaviors. And this was definitely the spirit behind the PACT law. The law is also about sharing values. And I think this is crucial, especially in these troubled times. I think we can all say that the French state has supported businesses in countries, and I think sharing values in the PACT law, we really wanted to highlight profit sharing so that the growth and the flows could be better shared. There are lots of improvements. Social flat rate, for example. And we moved our taxes from 20% to 0% on social flat rate to encourage profit sharing. what are the results? Are they all there? Do we have satisfying results? Not entirely, to be honest. There is a difference between employees who benefit from profit sharing in SMEs and between employees who benefit from profit sharing in big concerns. There's still a gap there, and there is still room for improvement here. I think maybe we should have specific profit-sharing plans depending on your sector of activity. I think this is something we might maybe try to deepen. But with the Pinnacle law, we managed to have collective agreements within companies when there were not sector-based agreement. And I think we really need to improve a bit more on that so that every employee can benefit from profit sharing scheme. We also try to simplify employee that are the processes around the employees that are shareholders, and we're better than the European average on that. So we can be very proud of that. And then, you've mentioned it, the PAC law is also all about purpose-driven companies, and I was talking to Roland before coming, and you talked about it yesterday. We talked about the three engines of the rocket, you remember? The first was to modify the civil code, and that was difficult. And we said in that modification that the company should take into account social and environmental criteria into account. Then second engine, the raison d'être, the purpose in the status. And then the third engine, as you remember, the possibility of becoming a purpose-driven company, a new legal status. The idea was not to create a huge, fast-working machine. That was not the idea. What we wanted was to give tools to companies. We didn't want to make the law mandatory and binding for everyone. We didn't want to be doing social washing, but it was important to give the opportunity for SMEs to have a simple scheme to change. And it's been a real struggle to be able to modify the civil code. It's been difficult. We had so many meetings, so many committees, so many commissions. We had debates on TV with Pierre Gattaz, the former MEDEF leader, and he was appalled by the idea. He said that it would be catastrophic, that we are going to really surrender all businesses to extremists. And on the contrary, I thought that giving the possibility, the option for companies to write in their status environmental issue would protect them. So, again, this is crucial in my opinion. And I don't think it's going to slow down growth. On the contrary, it's going to be an accelerator. And 2 years later, I'm so happy because no, I don't think that we've overthrown capitalism in France. I do not think that these fears were justified. On the contrary, we allowed companies to move forward. We have almost 200 purpose-driven companies, lots of SMEs, and I think it's not enough. As I understand, we have many other big players who are always also committing themselves towards that direction, and that's fantastic. We've got big business who's also changing. I see that Française des Jeux as well is making a move, and I think it would be grand if the Française des Jeux could be a purpose-driven company. That'd be fantastic. But if I want to have an expectation, and if I want to be demanding, then I have to admit I'm a bit frustrated on the shareholders' foundation. It's a model that exists in Nordic model, in Germany, for Bosch, for example.
Carlsberg, Rolex, lots of companies. I think half of the CAC 40 in the northern countries have this system where the equities are brought into a foundation that only cares about long-term strategy. And I think we had 4 shareholders foundations that explain how difficult it was to be created. And very few companies have used that tool yet. But I know lots of entrepreneurs who would be ready to seize shares in some of their shares for the company to give them to a foundation. And when we think long-term in the French capitalism, then I think there's another potential powerful tool that we could use. And that it would be really meaningful. Maybe our tax system is not quite following. Maybe we need to redefine this as well. But I'm ready to meet up that challenge. So what is next? We've created the law, we've created tools, we've created the right conditions, and now we need you. If we're all here for this summit, it's because we're committed to change. And I think the crisis, unfortunately, or rather fortunately, strengthened the right conditions to achieve change. We've seen that employees, managers have questioned the system. And of course, the crisis has been terrible, but I think that we will come out of it stronger than before. Businesses have changed radically. They've changed faster than what we thought would have been possible. And you change faster than the political world. And that is why we want to include entrepreneurs in the political world. We need to build bridges. We need to have a relation, and we need to have exchanges between the world. We need exchanges between the companies and between the government. I'm not here as a representative of the party for the presidential election. It's not that, but I do think that cooperation would be beneficial. And there are 7 countries who are following our example. And that's all thanks to the work we're doing in France and at the European level in the Commission. And the Commission last year suggested an initiative to change the regulatory framework and to make sure that long-term strategy should overthrow short-term benefits.
We want the lines to change to account more for what economists called negative externalities, and it means that we'll be able to open the thought to other subjects. I'm thinking about maybe the remuneration of directors linked to ESG issues or subjects. It's a very complex work program. We won't be able to get rid of it. There's a revolution on accountability with ESG criteria, and this needs to be included in our entrepreneurial balance sheets, and this is what our group in the European Parliament will be fighting for. Pascal Durand, we've chosen him, and he has an offensive approach on this subject, and he will carry this forward and carry forward the French citizens on this in the subject. And we have a fantastic opportunity in a few weeks or a few months, should I say, will be the French presidency of the European Union. And you can rely on me with the President of the Republic to be at the heart and put this at the heart of our European agenda. I can see all of the diplomatic corpus of the roundtable discussion, and I know that I've been talking a lot. I just wanted to mention briefly the European battle, and you can rely on us to carry it out, and on the field transform our companies and build a new capitalistic organization and society. Thank you. You can stay here, Stanislas, and thank you very much for coming over to talk to us and taking the time to do this. We're very happy about listening to your messages. They're very encouraging at the eve of the French presidency to the European Union. That will, of course, be a good occasion to transform many things that are in preparation. Marie Guillemot is in charge of the board of KPMG. I'm also going to speak to you, tutoie you, and I would like to invite you to join us. And you can both stay on stage. If you need the little table, you can maybe swap over. And then, before I give you the concluding words, I would like to thank you, and I'd like to thank the commitment of KPMG. Your team is fantastic. You already know this, I'm sure. And Xavier and Laurent have helped us also a great deal to organize this event. The event has been very enriching. It's lasted over 2.5 days. People from all over the world took part, and also online. Quite a lot of people online, because of course COVID doesn't help. But thankfully we were able to organize it before it was too late. And I think that from next week things are going to get going to hot up a bit, aren't they? So from Tuesday morning, actually, I'm going to now allow you to give a few words of conclusion before the very artistic final firework. Thank you to you at KPMG for everything you've been doing. Thank you for all your help, and thank you for your Transformation for Good program, which is also very much part of the whole. Thank you, Luc, and also thank you to the team. I would like to say that we are very proud to have welcomed this NextGen Enterprise Summit. There's a lot of energy here. And I have a lot of energy, and I would like to finish off with these few words. They're not words of conclusion, because it would be a shame to, stall the richness of the 2 days. But I would like to just share a few beliefs I have, and this will be a look towards the new generation of companies as well. And I just wanted to say that one of the first times in history, the new generation, our youth, have as much to teach us as that we have to teach them. This has been well demonstrated, but through digital technology, also through agility. We're all seeking it. They're very clever at it. They're very connected. And we can see the speed at which they find solutions. And we're going to be able to rely on them also for these ESG aspects that we need to stick to and want to stick to. And some have felt maybe that their call was maybe too dramatic or radical or militant, but I think it's important, because the challenges that we have to meet are huge and urgent. As mayor and also as a director, it is my deep will to listen to them and to understand them. Listen to them because, of course, these younger generations have to be heard within the company, and sometimes we don't give that voice to them to be heard, and that's why we've set up the committee within KPMG, and I'm sure Laurent talked about it properly and you understood about it a couple of days ago. Now, we also need to understand how we can better free up energies and better channel these energies and value the different and diverse competencies, and we need to learn how to make people more responsible and recognize the merits of commitment and proactiveness that they have to in place to teach us to go further. So I really share this belief that we need to give them the floor and a voice. And the second belief is that we need to move from a management system that was based on controlling and supervising and processes to a management system far more based on trust. It's far more relevant to this uncertain world. I know that you've talked about this, and me first. I don't know what will be in stock for us, in pipeline for us in the future. Maybe we'll all be working from home and teleworking. What's interesting to me is not to think and anticipate on all of the ways of working that are potential. What's interesting is that we prepare our teams so they know how to act in a responsible and autonomous and proactive and creative way as much as possible. This also means giving them this allowance to do. It means letting go, and it assumes that we are working along these lines where we give way from controlling power and give this controlling power, really hand it over to our young people in our teams. And I believe more in a management system that's based on synapses rather than a 2D structure as was previously set on a chart. You need this governance structure, of course, to ensure that the whole company is on track and on track with values and the raison d'etre and the action plan. But impulses need to be far more decentralized or devolved and autonomous and much closer to the sensors on the field so that things are more relevant and quicker. And we really, really need this a great deal. Now, on a more personal note, I am from a family of sailors, and sailors are never prepared better than prepared for the unknown and the unpredictable. And this is something that I live, and I live my experience in KPMG very differently because of this. And I think we've been talking about preparing for the unpredictable. A couple of years ago, or a few years ago, I'd brought in Patrick Doré, who was a teacher at Polytechnique at the time, and we were talking about crises, and we were talking about Katrina and Louisiana, and it was far from management crisis organization. And I know that you in Human Resources divisions, in your transformation and innovation programs, you've already acted. And I think that the 2.5 days that you've just spent together have allowed you to make all of these actions less secret on a daily basis, all of these daily actions. And I think that all of this is going in the right direction. I wanted to say a few words about this last belief, because I've been trying to infuse this ESG approach, the mission approach, the company committed, or that we've committed to within KPMG for the past few months in KPMG since I arrived. It's my strong belief, and it's also of great interest to me. And as I told you earlier on, it's not an option, Luc. And I listen to everything that can encourage us to do and free up energies. And since I am very optimistic by nature, or even I always think everything is possible. I think that this is how we will do this, address in an accountable way, in a committed way, in a motivating way, all of our teams to meet these major challenges, the challenges of France, of Europe, and also the challenges that go beyond our borders, and those are challenges that are of a human nature. And so I have this belief that I would like to share with you, and that's it. I would like these few words of conclusion to really say that this pandemic has drawn our attention to the human value and the action that we're all going to commit to together, of course, because I think it goes beyond borders of companies, and it really means going into the ecosystems, and it assumes that we change things and transform ourselves personally. I think it's also an individual development. It goes from denial to awareness, and then to action and strength to act. And I encourage you all, each and every one of you in your different companies, in your different families, and in your group of friends, to work in this way so that we can uphold these major challenges together. Thank you very much. Congratulations to Marie. And this is the beginning of a mandate that is very promising. I think that we ought to have more women at the head of major groups in France, and we're all working for this to happen. We also have enlightened men, many. I said this because in Orange I was involved in women's networks. It may seem a bit rather unusual for a man. I think that's how we met the first time, actually, in Evian. We worked for Intérêt and Jamais Sans Elle as well. So no conference where there are just men, no more conferences. It's unbearable, actually, and it's not possible, is it? It's not the way forward. Diversity improves collective intelligence. That's based on research. And the second diversity is gender equality. It's very simple and very basic on a daily basis, and it's very good news that you are at the head of the board of KPMG. Congratulations. I wanted to thank the team, NextGen team. They organized this summit and turned it into real life and reality. Suzanne, Julien, Maud, Myriam, Fleur, please come and join me on stage. And Xavier and Laurent also, could you please come and be here with us for the closing photograph? So, quick concluding photos. This is the KPMG Dream Team. Stanislas, you can. There we go. Stand here in the middle. Suzanne, and here we go. Perfect. In the Dream Team, there are roles that people play. Suzanne, I won't need to explain. You've understood what she does over the past 2.5 days. She's fantastic. She's a good moderator. She mixes intellect and human beings and reason with very elements that raise sensitivity and culture and awareness. Then we have Myriam Garlet. Myriam, it doesn't have 5 arms like Shiva, but it's as if she were. She works day, night, all the time. It's not good. It's not reasonable for her to do this, but she loves it, and she's super, super committed. Thank you to you. Maud. So Miriam is an organizer. The 50 speakers, all of the artists know you, Maud. If you hadn't been here, none of the logistics of the event would have worked. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, Maud. You're a fantastic woman. Julien. Julien is a young man with huge potential. I think you've learned a great deal, and that's just going to carry on, isn't it? You've learned about digital, all of the digital and sales aspects were perfect. Thank you, Julien. It's it bodes well for the future. And then Fleur, Olaf. Fleur is very discreet, very humble, but she has great deal of power on social media and communication. She's really exceptional. Well done for your professional approach and your good mood. We haven't been able to get her cross. I haven't been able to make her cross over the past 1.5 years. It's just impossible. She's emerged, she doesn't like give in to fear or stress or anxiety. Great. I have a great deal of respect for Fleur. And I would like to say thank you, Luc. Luc, you brought the idea of NextGen into being. You are the origin of NextGen, and I was delighted to join you in this adventure and set up this summit with you in the past year also. You're fantastic. You have everything juggling. You're juggling with everything. You have partners, politicians. You assemble people, bring them together. So thank you very much for your commitment over the past 2.5 days. And you do it all the time. Of course, you need to take a breather. Well, I think I'll have a good sleep this weekend. Thank you very much, Luc. Right, I'm going to swap over, actually. And everyone can stand, please. Okay, we're going to form a circle. And those remaining are co-hosts. There are lots of people, Michelle, Nicole, partners. Back in the technical room, we have all of the technical guys. All of you, those who are here, well, we co-created this summit. It's magical. And we're going to all make this music together. Well, we did this music together, and the power and the strength of this sharing across borders, across cultures. Sometimes I have fun with the French, and I apologize because I'm Swiss, of course, and sometimes we're quite sort of strict and rigid, but so it's quite funny for me, the French side of things. I learned that the minister, Monsieur Bruno Le Maire, had a view opener so that people could see him. It's a sort of lorry that parks in the street. I'm sorry, I thought it was really funny. Sorry, it made me smile. Anyway, but through these differences in culture that we have, we've set off a movement that spans all of these different models. We're going to talk about this with Niels Flegging this afternoon. We talked about it a lot with Niels Flegging. It was a heated discussion. There's not one truth, there are several truths. And so I would like to give you all a big round of applause for taking part, for participating. Thank you. And if we are to succeed, it will succeed all together to change something in this world. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And thank you for going along this adventure together. Thank you very much to all of you. Your wings are important and your help is important in this mission. So now we're going to stop and we're going to celebrate. Moving Art, our friends are going to come and join us, the Moving Art movement. So if you'd kindly be seated to watch them. This is a moment of beauty and poetry to close this day. Thank you.
100,000 on my head is disrespect. So offended that I had to double check. You tryna check? This is real life, niggas think we playing chess. So what's next? Jump up out the bed like I'm possessed. I go out on tour and I say I'm drinking less. And I'm getting loose and getting pictures from my ex. SMS, triple X. That's the only time I ever shoot below the neck. Why you keep on shooting if you know that nigga dead? That's the only kind of shit that get you so much respect. Got a lot of blood and it's cold. They keep trying to get me for my soul. Thankful for the women that I know. Can't go 50-50 with no hope. Every month, she don't even love me, she just putting on the front. She gon' try and set a lot of court and make them run. They gon' ask me how I'm going.
A big applause to the...
Big round of applause.
The show is not over yet, because I invite you to just step outside and go for the second firework, and then take the stairs down to have a small glass accompanied by move and art. So take your stuff and just take a step outside. You can as well take that way, and it will be the second part of the firework. See you outside.